The mountain was still breathing, his face covered in blood and sand. Oberyn stood over him, his spear shaking in his hand. The crowd watched in silence, waiting for the final strike. Tyrion was on his knees, chained, eyes wide with fear and hope. Tywin Lannister sat on the judge's seat, cold and calm as always. Cersei's lips curled in a fake smile, but something changed. Oberyn didn't finish the mountain. Not yet. Instead, he turned to the crowd. His voice echoed through the hall. "Tell them, Gregor!" he shouted, eyes burning with rage. "Tell them who gave the order! Tell them who told you to kill my sister!" The mountain groaned, half-conscious. Oberyn raised his voice louder this time. "You raped her. You murdered her. You killed her children. But you weren't alone. You were told to do it. Say his name." He turned and looked straight at Tywin. Everyone turned too. Tywin's face didn't move. No expression. But his eyes, sharp, cold, locked with Oberyn's. It was like a silent war between them. And then Oberyn did something no one expected. He dropped his spear. "I won't kill him yet," Oberyn said, pointing to the mountain, "because I want everyone to hear the truth first." "The truth you've hidden for years, Lord Tywin." Murmurs rose in the hall. The High Septon stood in confusion. Tyrion's face twisted in disbelief. Cersei's smile disappeared. "My sister, Elia Martell," Oberyn said, voice steady but shaking with pain, "was married to your crown prince. She had children. And when your city fell, she begged for mercy. But what did you do? You gave her to that beast." He pointed again at the mountain, who still struggled to breathe. "You ordered her murder. You told your dogs to butcher her and her children just so the Lannisters could prove loyalty to Robert Baratheon. You gave her up like she was nothing." Gasps filled the room. Lords and ladies began whispering. The truth wasn't new to some, but hearing it spoken out loud in front of the realm, that was dangerous. That was treason, or justice, depending on who you were. Tywin finally stood. Calm, cold, and proud. "You dare accuse me of crimes from a war long over?" he said. "You stand here, a guest in my city, and speak lies?" "They're not lies," Oberyn snapped back. "And you know it. Everyone knows it. You are no lion. You are a butcher in golden armor." Tyrion's heart pounded. He looked from his father to Oberyn, realizing this could be the end of everything, or the start of something new. "I challenge House Lannister's honor," Oberyn shouted to the court. "Let it be known that Tywin Lannister ordered war crimes, crimes against my family, and crimes against the realm. Let the people decide." Tywin's jaw tightened. Cersei stood now, shouting for the guards. "Enough!" she yelled. "This is madness!" But the hall was already chaos. Lords rose to speak. Whispers turned to arguments. Tyrion sat frozen. The mountain lay bleeding. And Oberyn? He just stood tall, calm, and full of fury. For the first time, someone had dared to speak the truth in front of the Lion of Casterly Rock. And the lion was cornered. The throne room exploded with tension. Lannister guards rushed forward, but Oberyn raised both hands calmly. "I came to this city for justice," he said, eyes locked on Tywin. "Not war. But if war comes, let it come. I have no fear of lions hiding behind golden masks." Tywin didn't blink. He motioned slightly with his fingers, stopping the guards. His voice was soft but sharp like a dagger. "You've said enough, Prince of Dawn. Be careful not to speak your last words." But Oberyn only smiled. "The truth lives longer than kings, Lord Tywin." People in the hall were still whispering. A few lords from smaller houses, some from the Reach, even one from the Vale, were exchanging looks, clearly shaken. For years, everyone had heard stories about what happened to Elia Martell during the sack of King's Landing, but no one ever dared to speak it out loud. Not in front of the man who truly ran Westeros. Until now, Tyrion stood slowly, ignoring his chains. "He's telling the truth," Tyrion said. Gasps again. Cersei turned to him, eyes wide with fury. "Shut your mouth, imp!" But Tyrion continued. "You all think my father is a man of honor? A builder of legacy? No, he's a killer who wears respect like a cloak. You want to talk about justice? Ask him why he let a man like Gregor Clegane serve him for so many years, knowing what kind of monster he is." "Silence him," Cersei screamed, but the High Septon raised a hand. "Let him speak," Tywin's eyes narrowed. The power he held over the court was starting to crack, one word at a time. You think my trial is about justice? Tyrion continued, voice louder now. It was about image, about revenge. My father never cared whether I killed Joffrey or not. He wanted me gone, because I'm not the son he wanted. He turned to Oberyn. But I thank you, Prince Oberyn. You gave me the one gift no Lannister ever gave me. Truth. Oberyn gave a respectful nod. At that moment, Varys stepped forward. His face was calm, but his eyes flicked nervously across the room. May I remind the court, Varys said, that if these accusations are true, we are not only speaking of murder, but treason against the crown. And the Martells are still one of the great houses of Westeros. The hall fell into a strange silence. Suddenly, one of the Dornish knights who had travelled with Oberyn stepped forward and tossed a sealed letter into the air. It landed at the feet of the High Septon. The seal of House Martell glimmered under the torchlight. The Septon opened it slowly. His eyes widened as he read. It is a declaration, he said, voice cracking, from Doran Martell, ruler of Dorne. He demands an official investigation into the deaths of Elia Martell and her children. Or Dorne will withdraw its loyalty from the Iron Throne. The silence turned dangerous. Tywin's lips tightened. This is a game you do not want to play. But now Oberyn's calm was gone. His voice rose with fire. You played this game when you murdered my sister. You thought we would forget. We never forgot. We waited. And now your lies are falling apart. The mountain groaned again, still alive. A shameful reminder of Tywin's cruelty. Suddenly, a knight from House Hightower spoke up. My lord father once said Tywin let the mountain loose during the war like a mad dog, that he gave no orders to stop him. Is this what we call justice? A second voice joined in. Then a third. The room shifted. Tywin was losing the room. Cersei moved closer to him, her face pale. Father, we need to end this. But Tywin remained frozen, like a man watching his kingdom crumble. One stone at a time, and then the worst happened. One of the silent sisters walked in slowly from a side door, holding a blooded cloth. The child, she said softly. Rhaenys Targaryen. Her body was found stabbed multiple times in the ruins of Maegor's Holdfast. Left under her own bed, she paused. This is how the mountain kills, brutally, without mercy. And he was not acting alone. Everyone stared at Tywin. This time he didn't speak. The line of Lannister had no words. The throne room stood in stunned silence. Tywin Lannister's reputation, so carefully built over decades, now hung by a thread. His face was stone, but even the strongest stone begins to crack under fire. And today, the fire had a name, Oberyn Martell. The bloodied cloth in the silent sister's hand was more than just evidence. It was a symbol, a child's life taken brutally. Rhaenys Targaryen's tiny dress, stained red, now burned itself into the memory of everyone in that room. Oberyn's voice sliced through the air again, cold and sharp. You call yourselves nobles. You sit in this room, judging others, wearing fine clothes, drinking sweet wine, but you have allowed monsters to walk among you. To kill children, to rape princesses, to butcher in the name of politics. He stepped toward the Iron Throne, not to sit, but to face it. This is the price of silence. This is what happens when we protect powerful men instead of innocent ones. Tywin opened his mouth at last. Do you think the realm survives on feelings, Prince Oberyn? War is not gentle. Sacrifices are made. No, Oberyn said, rage now clearly shaking his voice. Sacrifices are chosen. And you chose my sister. You chose her children. You chose to keep this beast by your side because he made you feared. Not respected, feared. Tyrion looked around the room, seeing the shift clearly now. Lords who once bowed to his father now leaned away from him. Even Tywin Lannister looked unsure. The air had changed. Varys, ever the watcher, took a silent step toward the front. If I may, he said, his voice as smooth as silk, this matter seems to have outgrown this trial. Prince Oberyn has brought not only claims, but witnesses, evidence, and now a political ultimatum from Dorne. The Iron Throne must choose, bury the truth once more, or face a storm greater than Robert's rebellion? Tywin stared at him, cold and calculating. You forget who won that war. No, Varys said softly. I remember exactly who lost. Gasps spread through the room again. That wasn't just a jab. That was a line being drawn. Varys had never spoken against Tywin. Until now, the High Septon looked like a man drowning in the tide. The gods demand justice, but such matters must be handled with care. Enough care has been given to lions, a voice called from the crowd. All heads turned. It was Ellaria Sand, Oberyn's lover. She walked slowly into the center, her eyes red with tears, her voice steady with grief. I held her hand once, she said softly. Ilya, she braided my hair when I was a girl visiting King's Landing. She was soft-spoken, kind, and full of life. And you crushed her skull like fruit. She looked at the mountain, still breathing in agony. You left her in pieces, her baby in bits. And the man who gave that order still breathes in this room. She turned her eyes on Tywin. I spit on your legacy, a small, sharp sound echoed. A golden goblet fell from Cersei's hand and rolled across the stone floor. It was as if the spell of Tywin's invincibility had broken. Sir Meryn Trant finally stepped forward, hand on sword. We should arrest them, this is treason. But the Dornish knights in the hall drew their blades instantly. Try it, one of them said. See how much blood this floor can drink. Tension snapped like a drawn bow. Swords out, words flying. The court was one breath away from war, but Oberyn raised a hand. No more blood, he said. Not yet. He turned to the crowd, his voice loud and final. I came here to fight for Tyrion's life, but this has become greater than one man. You all saw the truth today. You all heard the confessions. If you let this go, you are as guilty as him. He pointed at Tywin. I do not ask for revenge. I ask for justice. Then he turned to Tyrion. I kept you alive. Now you must decide if you want to keep fighting. Tyrion didn't speak. He just looked at his father, once the man who controlled every part of his life. And for the first time, he saw something new in Tywin's eyes. Fear, not fear of death. Fear of exposure, of losing control, of truth being stronger than lies. And in that moment, Tyrion knew. The game had changed. The small council chambers had never been so quiet. Tywin Lannister sat at the head of the long table, staring into the flickering candlelight. His face was calm, but his mind was a battlefield. Across from him sat Cersei, eyes wide with anger, fingers twitching. Grand Maester Pycelle sat nervously, barely able to hold his scrolls. Only Varys remained as composed as ever, his hands folded, watching. They humiliated you, Cersei hissed, in front of the whole court. They called you a murderer, a coward. They turned my trial into a circus. It wasn't your trial, Tywin said coldly. Cersei blinked. What? Tywin raised his eyes slowly. This was never about Tyrion. That trial was our chance to send a message. But now, he leaned back. Now we've become the message. Cersei slammed her hand on the table. Then why haven't you killed Oberyn? Why is he still breathing? Because if I do, Tywin said sharply, dawn will rise. The Martells aren't fools. Oberyn's not alone. He brought knights, spies, and proof. Doran Martell is watching, waiting. If I move too quickly, I'll spark another war, Cersei's mouth twisted. You always say war is a last resort, but sometimes it's the only option. No, Varys said, voice soft but clear. Sometimes war is exactly what they want us to choose. Tywin glared at him. Varys continued. Dorne has waited years for justice. You gave them nothing. Now they've dragged your secrets into the light, and you still sit on a throne made of silence. But silence won't save you this time, my lord. Not anymore. Tywin stood slowly, towering over them all. Then what would you have me do? Confess? He said mockingly. Shall I stand before the court and say, yes, I ordered Gregor Clegane to kill a woman and her children? Shall I fall on my sword for the sake of honor? No, Varys said. But you may have to fall. To protect your house. The words hung in the air like poison. Cersei's face went pale. You dare? Enough, Tywin growled. Leave me. Everyone obeyed. Even Cersei, though she stormed out like a wounded lioness. When the door closed behind them, Tywin finally exhaled. He was alone now. For decades, he had controlled everything. Kings, wars, gold, names, marriages, he bent them all to his will. He thought his legacy would stand on the bones of his enemies. But he never imagined his legacy would be questioned by truth, and worse than truth, a martell with a mouth. Meanwhile, in the guest chambers of the Red Keep, Oberyn paced in silence. Ellaria sat on the edge of the bed, watching him with tired eyes. "You've started something you can't stop," she said. "I never planned to stop," Oberyn replied. "Not until the lion is brought to his knees. But what if he doesn't fall?" she whispered. "What if he kills you next?" Oberyn smiled slightly, but there was sadness in it. "Then dawn will rise. My daughters will rise. You will rise. I will not be the last Martell who seeks justice." She stood, walked to him, and placed a hand on his chest. "Promise me something. If things go bad, if Tywin strikes, don't let him turn you into the very thing you hate." Oberyn looked into her eyes and nodded. "I'm not doing this out of hate. I'm doing it out of memory." At that moment, a knock came at the door. It was Tyrion. "May I come in?" Oberyn nodded. Tyrion entered, his face still bruised, but his spirit strangely stronger. "You've started a war," Tyrion said, pouring himself some wine. "And I'm not sure if I should thank you or be terrified." "Why not both?" Oberyn said. Tyrion chuckled. Then he turned serious. "My father won't let this go. He's going to strike back, quietly, deadly. That's how he works." "I know," Oberyn said. "So what's your next move?" Oberyn looked at him. "We bring in the others." "Others?" Tyrion raised an eyebrow. "There are more people in Westeros who hate your father than you realize," Oberyn said. "I've already sent ravens. To Riverrun. To Storm's End. Even to the Iron Islands. If Tywin wants to play the game, we'll bring the whole board to him." Tyrion sipped his wine, smiling bitterly. "You may live to regret that." Oberyn leaned closer. "And you may live to see him fall." The raven arrived just before dawn. Tywin stood by the window of his chambers, robe draped over his shoulders, eyes locked on the parchment in his hand. The message was short, but it was enough to drain the color from his face. "Riverrun stands with dawn. Tully blood remembers." He crushed the note in his fist. Behind him, Maester Pycelle cleared his throat. "Shall I prepare a reply, my lord?" Tywin didn't even turn. "No, there will be no reply. Riverrun is already gone." Pycelle blinked. "But the Tullys, they've crawled back from their holes," Tywin said coldly. "Just like rats. And Oberyn's fire has given them a reason to believe they can rise again." He turned slowly now, walking back to the table. Maps of Westeros were spread out, marked with pins and lines. A war planner's table. But this war wasn't like the others. This one was personal. "Oberyn is creating a chain of whispers," Tywin said, mostly to himself. "He doesn't need armies. He only needs voices. He wants to turn my power into poison." Pycelle nodded slowly. "What will you do, my lord?" "I'll cut the tongue of every whisperer before they learn to speak." Across the city, in a quiet cellar beneath a tavern, Tyrion Lannister sat in a cloak, face half hidden. Opposite him sat a man with a scar across his throat. His voice was rough, like rocks grinding together. "You want names?" the man rasped. "You'll pay for names." Tyrion dropped a small pouch of coins onto the table. "You'll be paid more if you speak fast." The man opened the pouch, nodded. "Word is, your father's been meeting with the Faceless Men." Tyrion's eyes narrowed. "Bravos?" "Yes," the man said. "Not directly, of course." "Through gold." "Lots of it." Tyrion leaned forward. "Who's the target?" The man gave a dark smile. "That's the mystery, isn't it? But it ain't Oberyn." "That's too obvious, my guess." "Someone close to him? Someone he can't protect?" Tyrion's stomach dropped. "Ellaria," he stood quickly. "If you hear anything else, send word to the Tower of the Hand. Ask for the imp." The man laughed. "Aye, you're more famous than half the kings in this city." Tyrion walked into the street, heart pounding. His father wouldn't face Oberyn directly. He'd go after the heart, break the man by taking what he loves. Tyrion knew that move well. It had been used on him all his life. At the same time, far away in Dorne, a raven landed at Sunspear. Doran Martell, calm and sickly in his chair, read the message slowly. His daughter Arianne stood beside him, anger in her eyes. "You're not going to ignore this again, are you?" she asked. "You see what Oberyn has done? He's shaken the lion's den." Doran looked up. "And if the lion wakes, it will bite. But we're not cubs, father," Arianne said. "We are snakes. And we strike when the enemy thinks we're sleeping." Doran placed the letter on the table. "Tell the captains to prepare, quietly. If King's Landing bleeds, Dawn must not look unready." Arianne smiled. "You'll support Oberyn?" Doran closed his eyes for a moment. "He is my brother. I have waited for justice. Perhaps I've waited too long." Back in King's Landing, Tyrion rushed through the halls of the Red Keep, passing guards and courtiers who barely acknowledged him. No one noticed the urgency on his face or the fear in his steps. He reached Oberyn's chambers and burst through the door. Ilaria stood at the window, startled. "What is it?" Oberyn asked, rising. "There's a death warrant," Tyrion said, panting. "I don't know who, but I think your lover is the target." Ilaria froze. "Me?" Oberyn's expression turned into something Tyrion had never seen before. "Not anger, terror. They want to break you," Tyrion said. "They'll take what matters to you most." Ilaria walked over, gripping Oberyn's hand. "Let them come. I'm not afraid." But Oberyn turned to Tyrion, voice like thunder. "Then we strike first." Tyrion shook his head. "You strike now and you start a civil war. That's what my father wants. To turn you into the monster. So what's the plan?" Oberyn demanded. Tyrion's eyes narrowed. "We take away his shadow, piece by piece. We show the realm that Tywin Lannister isn't untouchable. We expose not just his crimes, but his weakness. And where do we start?" Oberyn asked. Tyrion gave a slow, bitter smile, with the one person Tywin has always hidden behind. "Who?" Tyrion looked him dead in the eye. "Tommen." The sun was just beginning to rise over King's Landing, bathing the Red Keep in a soft golden light. But inside, shadows were growing. Prince Oberyn Martell, clad in simple Dornish robes, walked slowly through the gardens of the Red Keep, his eyes not on the flowers or fountains, but on the small figure sitting alone near the edge of a marble bench, King Tommen Baratheon. A boy pretending to wear a crown too heavy for his neck. Tommen looked up, startled as Oberyn approached, but the prince smiled gently. "No need to fear me." "Your Grace," Oberyn said in a calm, almost fatherly voice. "I didn't come with a sword today. Only a story." Tommen blinked, unsure. "My mother. She doesn't like you. Your mother doesn't like most people," Oberyn chuckled. "That's not your fault." "May I sit?" Tommen nodded. Oberyn sat beside him, stretching out his legs like a relaxed uncle. "I want to tell you about a princess. Her name was Elia." Tommen turned slightly. "The one they say, the Mountain." "Yes," Oberyn said, no longer smiling. "She was your aunt in a way. She was married to Rhaegar Targaryen, the man your family killed." Tommen looked down. "I don't understand any of it. People whisper around me, and when I ask questions they just say, 'It's not for a king to worry about, but I am the king.' And kings should know the truth," Oberyn said softly. "That's what makes them strong. Elia was kind. She loved her children. She didn't die in battle. She was murdered in her bed, and so were her children, your cousins." Tommen swallowed hard. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because your grandfather," Oberyn said slowly, "was the man who gave the order." Tommen's eyes went wide. "No, that can't be true." Oberyn didn't argue. He just looked at the boy. "Ask him. Look him in the eye. Ask him what happened to Elia of Dawn, and see if he answers." Tommen was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that would change everything. "Why are you telling me the truth, when no one else does?" Oberyn smiled sadly. "Because lies are like poison, your grace. They weaken a king. But the truth, it makes him dangerous." Later that day, Tywin was in the council chamber when the young king entered unannounced, followed by Sir Meryn. "My king," Tywin said, rising in surprise. "What brings you? Did you give the order to kill Elia Martell?" Tommen asked plainly, his voice thin but sharp. The room froze. Cersei's cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the stone floor. Pycelle looked like he might faint. Tywin stared at his grandson. "Who told you that?" I'm asking you, Tommen said again louder. Did you give the order? Tywin was silent for a moment. Then his voice returned, cold and commanding. You are a boy, Tommen. You are not ready to understand the weight of war. So you did, Tommen whispered. Tywin stepped forward. What happened in the past was necessary. To protect the realm. To protect this family. You murdered children. Tommen shouted suddenly. That's not protection. That's evil. Cersei moved quickly. Tommen, sweetling, you mustn't say such things. No, Tommen said, backing away. I'm not your puppet. I'm the king. Tywin's face turned dark, but it was already too late. That night the servants whispered what they saw, the king screaming at his grandfather, the queen mother arguing with both, Varys slipping away with a scroll, and Oberyn sitting in the garden. Smiling, by the next morning, small cracks began to form in the Red Keep's foundations, not of stone, but of loyalty. A letter from Highgarden arrived, cautiously worded. The Tyrells were concerned about the king's well-being. A second raven came from the Vale, Lord Royce requesting clarity on rumours of war crimes. Even inside the King's Guard, there was confusion. Sir Balon Swan approached Jaime Lannister quietly in the armory. Is it true? He asked. Did your father give the order? Jaime didn't answer. He couldn't. He had asked himself that same question for years. Later that evening, Tywin sat alone in his chambers again. But this time, he didn't look powerful. He looked old. The lion was still breathing, but the jungle had changed. The people were whispering. The court was watching. And now even his own blood, Tommen, was pulling away. Then a knock came at his door. A shadow entered, not a servant. Varys. I thought I dismissed you from my council, Tywin said coldly. You did, Varys said. But I came as a friend, or perhaps as a messenger of what's coming. Tywin narrowed his eyes. Oberyn has done more than speak, my lord, Varys whispered. He has started something no blade can stop. Truth is a sword no armor can deflect. Tywin stood, proud even now. Let him come. I've crushed worse. Varys smiled faintly. Yes, but you've never crushed yourself before. The bells of the great sept rang earlier than usual that morning, not for a death nor a wedding, but for a royal proclamation. In the throne room, Tommen sat on the iron throne, his golden crown almost slipping as he leaned forward nervously. His voice was soft but clear, the words written carefully by his own hand the night before. As King of the Seven Kingdoms, I hereby order a formal inquiry into the death of Princess Elia Martell and her children, to be conducted by a council of neutral lords, including representatives from Dorne, the Reach, and the North. Gasps erupted from the gathered nobles. Lords shifted. A few murmured prayers. Cersei's jaw dropped in disbelief. Tywin sat in complete silence, face unreadable. Tommen continued, gaining confidence. This is not an act of rebellion against House Lannister. It is an act of justice. If the throne cannot stand on truth, then it will fall under the weight of lies. When the hall was dismissed, Tywin didn't move. Not at first. Then slowly he rose and walked toward the Iron Throne, not to kneel, but to lean in close. You've just made a very dangerous decision, he whispered to Tommen. Tommen looked back at him, and for the first time, he didn't look like a scared boy. I learned it from you, he said simply. Dangerous decisions are how you built everything. Tywin stared at him, eyes narrowing. He saw it now. His control was slipping. In the chambers of the Tower of the Hand, Tywin poured himself a drink alone, the fire crackling softly behind him. Kevan Lannister entered a moment later, closing the door behind him. You should have stopped him, Tywin said without looking. Kevan hesitated. He's the king. He's making his own decisions. Tywin turned sharply. He's a child. No, Kevan said firmly. He's a boy who just humiliated the most powerful man in Westeros. That child is now more dangerous than you ever were. Tywin's hands clenched the goblet so tightly it nearly cracked. You forget who made this family powerful. And maybe, Kevan said, you've forgotten that power built on fear doesn't last. For the first time, Kevan didn't lower his head before leaving the room. Later that evening, Deep within the black cells beneath the Red Keep, a man sat chained in the dark, bones thick, breath shallow, Sir Gregor Clegane. The mountain that rides, now a shadow of the monster he once was. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. A tall man in a black hood entered, flanked by 2 gold cloaks. Tywin followed behind slowly. His face hard as ice, he stood over the dying knight, who barely managed to lift his head. "I protected you for years," Tywin said quietly. "Let you kill, burn, and destroy, all in the name of fear. But now, your name is poison," Gregor groaned. "You're going to confess," Tywin said. "You're going to say that you acted alone, that you killed Elia Martell without orders, that you lied to me, that I never knew." Gregor coughed, blood spilling from his mouth. "If you say the words, I'll send you to Qyburn. He'll keep you alive." In a way, the mountain didn't speak. He only blinked slowly. One of the gold cloaks stepped forward, holding out a piece of parchment and a quill. Tywin leaned in close. "Say it, Gregor. Save your legacy, and I'll erase you from history with honor." Gregor looked up and spat blood on Tywin's boot. Tywin's face didn't flinch. He turned to the hooded man. "Make it look like a confession. Burn the original, seal the false one. Have the Septon read it publicly." The man nodded once and left with the document. Behind him, Tywin looked down at the monster he once used like a weapon. Now, Gregor was just a rotting tool in a dying war. "Even beasts forget who made them," Tywin muttered before walking away. The next day, a proclamation was read from the steps of the Sept. "Sir Gregor Clegane has confessed to acting alone in the death of Princess Elia Martell and her children." The court was divided. Some believed it, most didn't. Oberyn certainly didn't. "Lies," he spat when he heard it. "He doesn't even have the strength to speak anymore." Tyrion stood beside him. "It's not about belief. It's about stalling. My father's buying time." "For what?" Oberyn asked. Tyrion looked toward the Red Keep. "For something worse." That night, ravens flew from the capital, dozens of them, each with a list of names, each sealed with the Lion of Lannister. Targets, bribes, threats, orders. Tywin Lannister was done playing defense. The sky over King's Landing was darker than usual. No storm clouds, no wind. Just a stillness, like the world itself was holding its breath. Inside the Red Keep, tension had grown unbearable. Tywin Lannister sat alone in the small council chamber, staring at the carved lion sigil on the table before him. The room was empty. No Cersei, no Kevan. Even Pycelle had made an excuse to avoid the day's meeting. For the first time in decades, Tywin's power felt distant, hollow, and then the door opened. Oberyn Martell entered without invitation. Behind him came Ilaria Sand, her eyes calm but sharp. Tyrion followed last, holding a scroll in his hand. Tywin didn't rise. He only looked at them, as if calculating how many ways this could end. "You're bold to come here uninvited," he said coldly. "I've been bold since the day you let my sister's blood soak your throne." Oberyn replied. Tyrion stepped forward, placing the scroll on the table. "Dawn has declared full political and military separation from the Crownlands," he said. "They'll no longer send taxes, soldiers, or support. The Reach is neutral. The Vale watches. And the North? Well, the North is always watching." Tywin didn't flinch. "You came to inform me that you've created chaos." "No," Tyrion said softly. "We came to show you what chaos looks like when it turns on its creator." Ilaria stepped forward, holding a small object wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it slowly, a gold brooch, the Lannister lion, drenched in dried blood. Tywin's eyes narrowed. "That came from inside the dungeons," she said. "From the man you tried to silence, one of your spies. He talked before he died, about the ravens, about your letters, about who you tried to kill." Tyrion added. "You've been buying assassins from Braavos, paying off Highgarden lords and forging documents. We have copies, originals, witnesses." Oberyn leaned forward. "You are not the man you pretend to be. You're not feared anymore, Tywin. You're cornered." Tywin stood slowly, finally showing his anger. "You think bringing your evidence will break me? I've ruled kingdoms. I've buried rebels. I've crushed houses. Your sister was a casualty in a war that saved Westeros." "You didn't save Westeros," Oberyn said. You made it kneel on broken bones and call it peace. Tywin's voice deepened. Everything I did for legacy. Tyrion's face twisted. Legacy? You spat on your own children. You treated me like filth. You used Jaime like a blade and Cersei like a chess piece. You made this kingdom a reflection of your fears, not your strength. Then why are you still alive? Tywin snapped. Tyrion didn't blink. Because, for the first time, your threats don't matter. A knock came at the door. A guard entered. My lords, he said nervously, King Tommen has summoned Lord Tywin to the throne room. Immediately, Tywin's mouth tightened. He walked past them, shoulders straight, but the weight of everything was dragging behind him like a ghost. The throne room was packed, nobles, guards, small folk pressed against the walls. At the front stood King Tommen, taller now, firmer. He held a scroll in his hand, trembling only slightly. Beside him stood the High Septon, and behind him, Maester Qyburn Tywin entered in silence, the sound of his boots echoing across the stone. Tommen looked down. I've read the accounts. I've seen the confessions. I've heard the witnesses. Even those your gold couldn't silence. He took a breath. By order of the crown, Tywin Lannister is stripped of all titles and positions. You are no longer Hand of the King, no longer Master of Coin, no longer Lord of Casterly Rock. Gasps filled the room. Cersei screamed from the corner, trying to push through the guards. But Sir Meryn held her back. Tommen continued. You will be confined to the Red Keep under house arrest until a full trial is prepared. Tywin didn't argue, he didn't shout, he just turned and walked out, silent. That night, King's Landing felt different, softer, sadder, free, but Tywin Lannister didn't make it to the trial. Because later that same night, as the city slept, a man in gold armor entered the Tower of the Hand, Jaime. He stood over his father's bed, looking down at the man who shaped him. I loved you once, Jaime whispered. But you made me a monster to protect your own sins. Tywin opened his eyes. Don't do this, he said, but Jaime only nodded. It's already done. And with a single thrust, the Lion of Lannister breathed his last breath. By dawn, ravens flew again, not to cover lies, not to buy silence, but to declare the fall of a kingmaker and the rise of a new realm born from truth.